Good evening. I'm Kurt Asher. I'm Dean of the Walter Stern Library. Welcome to all of you and to our candidates for District 4 Supervisor, David Couch, Jose Gonzalez, and Grace Vallejo. This debate will give us all a chance to become better acquainted with the candidates and their platforms and their vision for our county. Before we get started, I'd like to publicly thank and acknowledge some of the people who made this event possible. First and foremost has been Dr. Ivy Cargile, of the CSUB Political Science Department. She brought this idea to us, and her efforts have made this event possible. I would also like to thank our incredible library staff, Teresita Overden, Chris Livingston, Eileen Montoya, Kathy Driscoll, and Frank Aguirre for leading the logistics and promotion and helping with the organization of this event. Another major thank you goes to the students in the Immigration Politics course, the Pre-Law Society, and the Political Science Club for researching the questions and helping assist with the debate. Finally, I'd like to thank our Vice Provost, Dr. David Schechter, for moderating. And thanks to all of you for coming. Now I'd like to introduce our organizer for tonight's debate, Professor Ivy Cargile.
Sorry, I'm a little short. Good evening, candidates, Kern County community members, students, faculty, and staff. Welcome to California State University Bakersfield campus. We are delighted to have you all here tonight to what should be a wonderfully insightful debate. We are excited to have Provost Jenny Zorn here tonight. Thank you for being here. And of course, we are excited and thrilled to have our new president, Lynette Zelezny, who is joining us here to listen to some of the great questions that our students have come up with. I would like to thank the three candidates for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us and to provide their mission and vision behind what their plans are for the newly created 4th District. And I would also like to extend my gratitude to everyone who has assisted me and the Political Science Club in organizing this event. None of this would be possible without the support of Dean Kurt Asher and his amazing Walter Stern Library staff, Eileen Montoya, Teresita Overden, who is live tweeting the event tonight, #KCDebate, Chris Livingston and Frank Aguirre and staff who have made us being here possible tonight. Thank you to the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, David Schechter, for agreeing to moderate tonight's event and for working on all of the questions that our political science students ardently researched and wrote for tonight's debate. I would also like to thank the political science majors and minors in my immigration politics class, members of the Political Science Club, and also of the esteemed Pre-Law Society. Without your hard work, none of the questions that we have tonight would be possible. I want to extend a warm thank you to Dr. Crable for her phenomenal Pre-Law Society, as well as the Political Science Department, who helped us see this vision through and provided all the support that they could to help us be here tonight. Lastly, I also want to thank and to turn the mic over to the Dean of School of Social Sciences and Education, Dean Steve Bacon, who is actually providing financial support for tonight's event. Thank you, Dean Bacon, and again, welcome to everyone. We are so delighted to have you here and see democracy in action. Enjoy yourselves.
Well, good evening. As Dr. Cargile said, I'm Steve Bacon, the Dean of the School of Social Sciences and Education here at CSUB. And on behalf of the university and the school, I want to welcome our three candidates, our moderator, and all the guests from the CSUB campus and from the wider community who are here tonight to see this important debate among the candidates for Supervisor of Kern County's 4th District. I'm particularly happy to see so many students here. You guys obviously get it. You understand that the only way we can improve our communities is if we're committed enough to become aware and then to get involved. This event is sponsored by the library, the Political Science Club, the Pre-Law Society, and the Political Science Department here at CSUB. As the Dean of the school that houses political science, I'm proud of the leadership these organizers brought to the event here today and bringing it to the campus. Now, like all of you, I look forward to listening to the ideas tonight and the aspirations of our candidates. So now, here's David Schechter, who is our Vice Provost and also tonight's moderator.
Thank you, Dean Bacon. Welcome. This is a great turnout tonight. We're very, very proud that, to host this event and so thankful that you're here. So my name is David Schechter. I'm the Vice Provost here at CSUB. But before coming here almost 5 years ago, I was chair of the Political Science Department up the road at Fresno State for 5 years. So I have a great love of campaigns and elections, and it's my honor to moderate tonight's event for you. To give you some idea of the area that we're covering tonight, Kern County Supervisor District 4 encompasses the following cities and areas. So you can give a shout out if you're from any of these places. You ready? Arvin, Buttonwillow, Delano, Lamont, Lost Hills, McFarland, Shafter, and Wasco. All right, so everybody's in the house. That's great. I want to also thank Dean Asher and his staff and Dr. Cargile for all the work that's gone into tonight and to make sure that this could happen. And sitting with me also tonight at the moderator's desk, I want to thank Nereda Barreto and Debro Sanders for helping me with the timing tonight. So here's our format. What we're going to do is we'll be out of here in about an hour and a half, but we do ask that you stay if you can, right? Because they're going to have closing statements. The candidates have agreed to stay around afterwards to answer particular questions that you might have. But we're going to try and wrap up the formal stuff by about 7:30. We're going to do that in two parts. From now until about 7 o'clock, we're going to take the questions that have been prepared by the students, and we're going to use that in a format where we did do a coin flip before tonight's event, and we're going to do a rotation with the candidates and get through as many of those questions as we possibly can. And then at somewhere around 7:05 or so, we will cut to audience questions. So we'll move, and where is Dr. Craybill? Dr. Craybill? Okay. There she is. Okay. So Dr. Craybill is going to work with a couple of students, and where are the students who are going to help with the questions? So would you guys raise your hands as well? Okay, so we have a couple of people who will then take questions from the audience, and we will just go through those for about 20 minutes. So when you have a chance, if you have a question for the candidates or we haven't covered a topic that's of interest to you, make sure that Dr. Craybill gets that index card, and she's going to organize those for me, and we're going to run through as many of those between about 7:10 and 7:30 as we can. And then each of the candidates will get a 1-minute closing statement, and we'll wrap up from there. So here are the ground rules. They're super simple. We've agreed in advance to use first names tonight. So they will call me David. I'll call them by their first names and just keep it informal. When you disagree with your opponent candidates, that's okay. And the audience needs to know what sets you apart and makes you different. So that's fine. And I will allow an exchange to continue if the discourse is civil and the audience is engaged. So otherwise, they will have 90 seconds to answer a particular question, and then we'll have rebuttals of 30 seconds each. And we'll get a rhythm going with those questions after one or two, and it should work out okay. Candidates also, please pay attention to my timekeepers, our helpers here tonight, and the students have prepared great questions for you, and like I said a minute ago, we want to get through as many as we can. And then audience, there are 2 rules for you. Number 1, please no shouting or interrupting of the candidates. We're here to listen to their ideas. Let's be good hosts, please. And I will ask Campus Public Safety to escort folks out of the room if anyone does get out of hand, but that's not going to happen, right? So let's be good hosts here at CSUB. Secondly, please silence your cell phones. So let's take a second to do that and make sure we're not disturbing either the candidates or the folks doing video or audio tonight or your neighbors with cell phones. In other words, please be on your best behavior, no jeering, whistling, or cat calls except right now. So please join me in welcoming our 3 candidates, Grace Vallejo, David Couch, and Jose Gonzalez. Okay, candidates, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So, as I mentioned before, by coin toss, we determine the order for opening statements, questions, and closing statements. We're going to start with Grace tonight, who is going to get the first opening statement of 2 minutes, and then she will get the first question, and then we will rotate through from there. So Jose will get the second opening statement, second question, so on and so forth. So, if you would, Grace, please start us off with a little bit about your background and anything that you personally think the audience should know about you, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay. First of all, I lost the coin toss. That's why I'm first. On the personal side, I am the daughter of a migrant family. We traveled up and down the valley picking the crops that were in season, and that was our livelihood as a full family. And so hard work has never been anything I shied away from. That's how I was raised. I was raised also with integrity. My father was a very proud man and made sure that we did everything that we could to be a better person. I worked in the fields for many years. Then I worked in a store called Kirby Shoe Store. You're probably too young to ever have heard of it, but it was a shoe store that was very popular during those days. I went to work for the phone company, so I've worked in the corporate area also. After 27 years or so, I retired, and the very next working day, I started working for the high school district office in the actual district office. I had an opportunity to work with students because I worked with the clubs from all 3 high schools in Delano. And so that was probably the best time of my life. The energy the kids had, and then their advisors showing how much time they gave of themselves because it was not a paid position. So after that, I retired after 15 years, and I put full time into my other thing, which was being on the city council. I've been on the city council for 14 years, mayor 4 times, and I served on the planning commission. So I do come on board with a lot of experience in government, which is definitely a plus for anybody who's wanting to go into being a district supervisor.
Thank you. Jose?
Well, I'm president of the Greater Lamont Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the community banking manager for one of our local credit unions, and I've been managing 3 credit unions. I have over 20 years of management experience. 14 years of that has been in the financial industry. I've also got my degree here from California State University, Bakersfield, so I'm an alumni here.
Not fair.
I also met my wife here, by the way. So I've been serving the community of Kern County for several years. And one of the things that brings me here was it's a great family town. Great education here at Cal State Bakersfield. One of the things that I was telling a couple of the community members earlier was that when I came here, I had the opportunity to create a great education. I had the opportunity to meet my wife here. I had the opportunity to, 3 years after I met my wife, my son actually came to school with me here. The professors were so open to having me get an education that they would allow me to bring my son here to school. They knew I was working really hard. And through hard work and perseverance, I've been successful and I've been using my education to help my community. I've been out in the community for several years, helping when it comes to financial literacy, helping people get into homes, as well as working with local governments, working with collaboratives, coalitions, to bring more resources to our communities. And so, with that being said, I am an immigrant. So I've gone through the challenges that a lot of our community members have gone through. So, para esos que todas las personas que están aquí, yo tengo 20 años trabajando con empresas aquí localmente, manejándolas y ayudando a la comunidad en muchas cosas, empezando con trayendo más recursos, ayudando a la comunidad cuando cuando ocupamos apoyo y cuando ayudamos para abogar por nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. David, your opening statement?
Thank you, David. First of all, thank you to CSUB. Thank you to all of you guys for being here. It might have been a little too familiar, you guys. Thank you for all of you being here. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself on a professional level and a personal level, and I'll try to squeeze that in 2 minutes. I was born and raised in Bakersfield, and I attended local public schools. I went to Bakersfield High School, and I went to San Jose State University on a tennis scholarship. I received a degree in business administration with a concentration in accounting. I came back to, then I tried to make it as a professional tennis player, and I spent way more money than I won, so I came back to town, and I got a job with Occidental Exploration and Production, which you now know as CRC, or California Resources. I did that for a few years, and I went to work for a much smaller oil company as the Pacific Coast District Accountant. That company was called Challenger Minerals. I don't think they're even around in Bakersfield anymore. I think they've sold off their leases. Worked a little while in the oil service industry, and then I went into a business that I had always really been interested in. That was the investment brokerage business. I did that for 25 years for 3 companies, and during that 25-year period, I spent 14 years on the City Council, Bakersfield City Council. And it was there that I sort of began to understand, obviously, a municipal government, and I began to understand how the city and the county interacted, where there were problems, where there were good things that were happening. And in 2012, I took the opportunity when Supervisor Watson retired to run for that open seat, and I won that. So that brings us up to here. I have, on a personal note, I have 2 stepdaughters. One lives in Idaho, one lives here in Bakersfield. They're both married, one to a firefighter, one to an attorney, and I have a 23-year-old son, and the 2 daughters have given me 7 grandchildren so far. So that wraps it up for me on a personal and professional level, and thank you very much again for being here.
Thank you, candidates. So remember, in terms of timing, we'll have 90 seconds for the initial respondent and then 30 seconds each for rebuttals from the other 2 candidates. If you wish to waive your 30-second rebuttal time, you absolutely may. Just let me know, and we'll sort of move on to the next question after that. So, Grace, you will get our first question tonight, and then Jose and David, you'll have 30-second rebuttals each. So, let's get started. We thought we'd begin with a question about immigration. In March of 2015, the Washington Post and local news outlets reported the deaths of 2 parents who were farm workers as a result of a chase involving Immigration and Customs Enforcement, commonly referred to as ICE, and mistaken identity in Delano. Is there a way to ensure the enforcement of immigration laws without putting unnecessary risk and harm to our community? Should local law enforcement cooperate with ICE agents?
You know, you asked a question that's very close to my heart. I was involved with the family, helping them with the funeral, and also planning a march in our city from the church over to where the reception would be held after the services. That was a very sad situation. Should never have happened. We did file charges through the DA against the ICE agents, but the DA decided not to file those charges after all, because they gave wrong information to our officers. It is not the job of our police to enforce any kind of immigration at all. That's the job of the ICE agents, but I believe that it should not have been handled the way it did. Because when you put fear in people, what happens is that you find instances like this where they decided that they had to run away, they hide, they don't go to stores, they don't take their kids to school because of the fear. So I don't believe that ICE agents should be handling the situations that are happening the way they are happening right now. That has got to change. It has to stop, actually. I truly believe that we're endangering our whole state, our whole world with this Trump immigration enforcement.
Thank you. Jose, you have a 30-second rebuttal if you'd like.
So I lived through something similar. Anytime a police officer would come anywhere near my family, my mom would then jump into prayer. I don't believe that law enforcement, local law enforcement, shouldn't be doing the job of ICE. I don't think that communication should be there, because community members that come and are here are looking for a better life for their family. I'm an example of it.
Thank you. David?
Thank Thank you. I think this is an important subject, and there are some distinctions to be drawn here. I don't believe that ICE agents, or ICE in general, should be doing the job of local law enforcement, or vice versa. Our local law enforcement should not be doing the job of ICE. There are two separate and distinct groups that should be doing two separate and distinct things. I do believe that there is a place for cooperation or coordination, specifically when it comes to violent criminals that have served time in prison that are now being released back into our neighborhoods. And that is a recipe, I think, for disaster. It didn't cause what happened in Delano, but I think it can cause a situation where ICE agents now need to go into a neighborhood or will go into a neighborhood where they wouldn't have before. And I don't think that's dangerous for the people in the neighborhood. It's dangerous for the people who are here, maybe not legally, but they're not causing any trouble whatsoever. And that's not who ICE needs to be focusing on.
Thank you. David, may I jump into David's comment?
Very quickly.
Love to.
So, very quickly, these families are only looking to feed their kids.
Yep.
They were being followed in high pursuit by ICE agents. That shouldn't have never happened.
I didn't say it. I specifically said I don't think this had anything to do with that incident.
David, the only thing I want to say is that what has been instituted by the administration is that they're not looking for the criminals. They're actually stopping law-abiding families. They're also stopping students. We had that incident here in Bakersfield at BC. So that's where the problem lies, is what's being directed by the White House, and we know who sits up there as far as going after anybody who's undocumented. And that's wrong, because people are living a good life here, yet they're being treated as criminals. And that's what I think is wrong.
Thank you.
And what I'm
let's move to question two.
Well,
and
I think
we
I just mischaracterized my answer.
We can come back to that, David. I'm open to it.
Okay.
But we started with 50 questions from students. We're trying to get through as many as we can tonight. And this second question will give you an opportunity potentially to talk a little bit more on the topic. The second question is, do you believe that Kern County, and Jose, you'll be first to answer with 90 seconds. Do you believe that Kern County should be a sanctuary county, or the state of California a sanctuary state?
I do believe that Kern County should be a sanctuary county. We need to protect our communities, our immigrant communities that are only looking to feed their families. I am a living person that has seen that himself. I'm an immigrant. I don't want community members to be afraid of law enforcement. I think good, abiding immigrants that are here, that are only trying to do is feed their families, they should not be subjected to be chased by law enforcement like it happened in Delano.
Thank you. David, 30-second rebuttal if you wish.
I think that the term sanctuary city, sanctuary state, sanctuary county is an effort by some people to appear that they are doing something for a group of people, when in fact, I don't think they're doing anything. Again, going back to my initial statement, where I would like to see ICE focus, or a law enforcement focus on cooperating with ICE, is simply in the jails. When you have someone who's a violent criminal that's here in the country illegally, let's just start here, and they are released from prison because they've done their time, it seems to me that they ought to be able to cooperate with local law enforcement, ought to be able to cooperate with ICE, because those are the people that I would like to see our immigration officials focus on as far as deportation. I'll tell you a story later, the one that I was specifically involved in, and will clarify the situation, hopefully.
Thank you. Grace, would you like 30 seconds on the question?
Yes. My thinking is that we have many, many individuals who were brought here very, very young. They know nothing else but this country. So why would you want to send somebody undocumented who had no idea what undocumented meant back to a country they have no way of living? Some don't even speak the language. So I think that what's being done is an injustice, and I think something has to change to stop what is going on at this time.
Thank you. Let's move to question 3. As we are on a school campus right now, this question deals with keeping schools safe places to work and study. Students should feel safe when attending school, and parents need peace of mind. Yet it is seen that more students are bringing weapons to school, such as pocket knives. At the same time, we see that gang violence in cities like Arvin and Lamont are beginning to reach the students of the local schools. This can result in students unable to focus on their education and poses a safety issue. How would you work with the school districts to address school safety in District 4? David, take it first.
The best way I think we could do that is to provide what's called a school resource officer or officers for each school. The difficulty in that right now is, in my conversations with the sheriff, he will say, or has told me anyway, that even if he had the funding, he can't hire enough people to fill that position because he's got other positions on the street that he would rather fill. That's the problem that we face. But that, I think, just the school resource officer specifically is the best way to help address school safety. I want to go back to the other question just for a moment because I have some extra time. I received a phone call a few years ago from a man who is the athletic director at Wasco High School. And he told me a story about a young man who would have been classified as a dreamer, came here at an early age, was a great kid by all accounts, making straight A's, great soccer player, had an ankle bracelet on because his father had gotten caught up in the drug trade, and in that process, they'd caught him up too, and he had done nothing wrong. He asked me what I could do to help him. They were going to deport this young man. I called David Valadeo's office, I told him the story, and I said, this is not the kind of guy we want to send out of the country. This is a good kid, he's not in trouble, he's making good grades, he's going to be a productive member of society. That young man is here in Bakersfield today, going to school because of that phone call. I think no matter what you want to think about me and anything that you have heard, I'm the only one that's sitting up here that has actually made that type of effort on behalf of someone and gotten that type of result.
Thank you. Grace, the question on school safety, what would you propose in working with the school district to address school safety in District 4?
Well, first of all, the schools in Delano asked us about providing the school resource officers that Mr. Couch mentioned, and so we've worked out an agreement so they don't carry the full weight of the financial in, because there is a financial element to this. But even with the school resource officer, it's very difficult to prevent something from happening in a school. I don't believe that teachers should be carrying guns. That has been brought up so much because I'm sorry, but sometimes a teacher with a gun is not the safest thing.
Thank you. Jose?
I propose that law enforcement needs to be supported. A lot of these departments get their budgets cut. They can't hire additional officers. These officers should be supporting the schools, especially around schools. We have the other issue is that we need support on mental health in our schools. What happens when our kids get into depression? We need to identify that. We also need counseling for our kids. So all of that is part of safety, because we don't want any of our kids to do do something drastic.
Thank you.
Can I jump in on that?
Great. Sure. Quickly.
Grace mentioned the school districts paying for the school resource officers. In Kern County right now, I should have mentioned when I was talking about the school resource officers, even if the school districts pay for the sheriff's officer, even if they pay, the sheriff can't find enough qualified applicants to fill all the slots that he needs on the street, much less the ones in the school. That is a problem that we're facing right now. So even if they're paying, which they would, we can't fill them at this point.
Thank you. Grace, we're back to you for the first answer on the next question, and we're sticking with public safety for this question as well. Kern County's homicide rate is 2.5 times the state rate. Last year, we had over 100 homicides. What specific ideas do you have to bring our crime rates down? How will you keep us safe?
Well, first of all, just to respond to a homicide, you need staff. And currently, the Sheriff's Department is so understaffed that if somebody is committing a crime, there's no way for them to get a response right away. And when they are responding to one crime, another one occurs, there's no one to answer. So understaffing is very critical right now. And that's something that I need to address, is staffing the Sheriff's Department and all other agencies that we would be dealing with. The other thing is that with homicides, there's a lot of drugs involved, and let's face it, prostitution. So some of that has to be looked at in order to avoid some of the homicides that's occurring. We have so much of that happening that the gangs are coming into our area, into Kern County from Southern California, because we're the closest area. So that's something else we have to start identifying so that we can work on the gang problem, which is causing a lot of the homicides when the gangs are after an opposite gang member. And that's very critical, is to work on identifying who are the gang individuals and have special gang agencies to work on that.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Jose?
So I agree to a certain extent with Grace on the fact that we need to support our law enforcement because they're working with limited staffing. We do need more officers, but we also need education. We need to start from when these people are small. We need to invite them not to be part of that type of way of life. Get them into programs that would benefit them, into careers that would benefit them. It's very easy to get into something, a way of life of crime, and that's what we want to get away with, and then don't want to get them to get into that type of life. So we need to start with education when they're small and invest in education.
Thank you.
I think we need to be realistic about some things. There are 10 unsolved murders in the city of Delano this year alone. And the police there believe that the reason they are unsolved is because people are not willing to come forward, because they feel threatened, they don't feel safe. There's a lot of gang activity in Delano. I think we need to focus on more neighborhood watch programs. We need to engage the community to be more of the eyes and ears, and we need to do something else. And I'll give the police chief in the city of Delano credit for this. He's new. He's maybe been there a month or two. His department is going into the communities, into the neighborhoods, and having block parties, music, games, bring the kids out, get the people in their front yards again. And he's going into the neighborhoods where he knows the gang members live. He's going to take the neighborhoods back. I think we need to start with simple concepts like that, but I think over the long term that could be effective.
Thank you. Next question will be for Jose. We're switching gears a bit here to a couple of questions about the environment. What plans do you have for making water safe for the residents to use in places like Arvin and throughout the district?
So the plans I do have is to work with local water districts. Find out what is preventing them to finding solutions in those areas. We also have to take a look at environmental health through the county. What kind of resources we can provide, and grant money that can be brought through federal government. A lot of the times we don't have that good relationship to bring those fundings back to water districts because a lot of them have skeleton staffing, and a lot of them don't have enough resources. So my job as a supervisor would be to support them by providing resources, look for grant monies to provide them, as well as using environmental health to do some research if they can't find a solution in those areas.
Thank you. David?
You can't do that. The water districts assess their landowners themselves. They provide their own source of revenue. And with all due respect, to say that the county would be providing resources. We are in the middle of a fiscal crisis. We have a 4-year plan to address our structural deficit. We have to really prioritize what we're going to spend our money on. And the water districts and the cities, we can help, we can assist, maybe with technical assistance, but we really are not in a position at this point to just throw money. The answer cannot be we're going to throw money at this problem and we're going to fix it.
Grace?
Well, in our city of Delano, I've been very proactive in making sure that we have clean water and shutting down wells when the nitrates appear. Unfortunately, we do use groundwater, and groundwater is where we put our wells in, and hopefully the water lasts for a long time at being good. When it doesn't, we did find some technology that cleans the water that's coming out of the bad wells. It is expensive. The technology we tried was $4 million, but we went after a grant, and that's how we were able to succeed there. So I do agree that we want to work together with whatever agencies provide water, whether private or public, so that we can clean the water as best that we are able to.
Thank you very much.
David?
Quickly, please.
So just quickly, I find it very interesting, David, that you said that you can't provide resources to local cities, water districts.
Water districts.
Well, the water district. You can't provide them with information that they would need. That's a resource. You could also work with the Environmental Protection Agency to bring or to help them collaborate and support them through the county. You can put them in connection if they don't have that relationship. That's a resource.
This is the difference between me and the other candidates up here. We would be turning to the water districts and their board members and their staff for that very expertise he is claiming that they would be turning to us for. The county is not set up to, we do not have experts in the water field. We don't have people that the water districts are clamoring to get information from. They have it. They're the ones that have it, and they have a significantly more money for those types of projects than the county of Kern does. There's 2 sheriff's deputies sitting down here in front, and we have not given them a raise in a long time, and we don't have enough sheriff's deputies on the street. But you're suggesting we spend general fund dollars to help water districts that have tons
I'm not suggesting that. I'm sorry. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying providing them resource by getting them information.
They have
you have environmental health. You're responsible for that as well as permits for them. You're supposed to be responsible for the quality of water in our community.
Okay,
we do not want our community to have cancer.
Grace, do you want to chime in on the last bit before I move to the next question about water?
Well, not just in water, but there is the private side and the public side. And in a way, when you're working with the private side, you want to collaborate with them because you can't dictate to private side. So if water is being provided by private industry, what you want to do is try to collaborate with them and see how can you help them. You can't say, no money, no resources, but you can ask, okay, how can we work together? Are there any grants that private and public can go after together? That's something that we should look at.
Thank you. So, David, you'll get the next question. We're going to switch from water quality to air quality. Okay. Kern County has consistently reached unhealthy levels in our air quality. The American Lung Association's State of the Air report states that Bakersfield is the worst in the nation for short-term particle pollution. What will you do as supervisor to fix this problem so that people in Bakersfield can avoid this unhealthy exposure, especially for those that might be farm workers?
I will continue to do what I am doing. And believe it or not, I know this will probably get a laugh. The air is actually better here than it was 20 years ago. There's been billions of dollars spent through fees collected by the air district, and it is getting better. Occasionally we have all these wildfires that impact us. But what I would do is continue doing this. Last year, the Air District meets once a year in a study session to come up with sort of the goals and what we really want them to focus on in the upcoming year as far as policy. And what they're still working on since last year is directing more money back to Kern County specifically, because Kern County generates about 15% of the revenue to the Air District, and we only have about 10% of the population. Excuse me. Yeah, we're not getting back as much money based on our population as we send there. So there's a new focus on Kern County and the Southern Valley really to bring projects back here. Part of the problem, in my opinion, is that people in the Southern Valley and in Kern County really don't like the Air District. So we have to find a better way of getting them engaged with the Air District, getting them to reach out to take advantage of the programs and possibilities that are available that other people up and down the valley are taking advantage of.
Thank you. Grace, Jose?
Well, I would promote policies that would encourage cleaner vehicles. That is the future, and in order to do that, we have to have EV charging stations. And one of the things that I would be sure is to make sure that we get EV stations in the rural areas along 99, because not only will it promote the economy, because it takes time to charge your car, you can, eat or shop in anything that's nearby. But I also will continue to work with the Air Resource Board, because doing that, Shafter will be getting money that will bring the air monitors to it, and I'll include or work to include the La Colonia and also Smith's Corner in that.
Thank you.
So I would add that we don't have enough air monitors in Kern County. We're not collecting enough data and holding companies accountable that are polluting our air. Why don't we have one in Delano? Why don't we have one in Lost Hills? Some of these areas don't have air monitors. We should have a lot more and hold those accountable that are polluting our air, as well as promoting zero-emission vehicles. We need more of those vehicles through our county and as well as in our communities.
Thank you.
Can I jump in on that as
Quickly.
well? I think we are missing the boat if we're going to focus entirely on electric vehicles. They're great, and we should focus on that. But we have to be focusing, in my view, on natural gas as well. And there is a movement up and down California to go entirely away from carbon. And we've got natural gas that is plentiful and it is cheap. And it would at least be a bridge to get us to where we might be able to use electric vehicles in a much higher capacity. Thank you.
Okay. Grace, you're going to go first on this next question. We're going to switch to some social issues for the next couple of questions. Last year, the Kern County budget was tight as the county did not make as much money from taxes as it did the previous year because of a decrease in oil, gas, and property taxes. As a supervisor, would you support the legal sale of marijuana in Kern County to compensate for this loss of revenue?
Excuse me, David, I believe that the medicinal cannabis is something that definitely should come into play, and it is the job of the supervisors, not just for the revenue, but for the residents that need to use it to not have to travel far for something that's beneficial to them. I think that we will see what the two initiatives, how that comes out, and as a supervisor, it's our job to uphold whatever the voters come up with and to ensure public safety, because after all, as a democracy, the voters will dictate as to whether or not there's going to be recreational distribution, cultivating, all of the different avenues of cannabis. And I think that's the right of everybody here and all over the state of California, because it's already legal in California.
Thank you. Jose?
So as far as medicinal marijuana, I think there are some pluses to that. I think that our community will bring some tax dollars if that happens, that the community votes on that and says yes. I do feel that if we continue on this path, we need to answer some questions that we haven't answered. Where is that money going to be stored for some of these industries? Because I represent the financial industry, and we can't take it because we're monitored by the federal government.
Thank you. David, a final rebuttal there?
Could you tell me the question again?
Would you support the legal sale of marijuana in Kern County to compensate for the loss of revenue the county's experienced?
Well, we already had that, basically had that question before us with the cannabis EIR and the ordinance, and I voted no, but I'll tell you why. The state is absolutely unprepared to, for any city of the cities and counties, in my opinion, to move forward. They need to really get their act together. They told us they would have it together maybe a year ago by now. We can always come back to that question, and we probably will, but we need to wait and see what that looks like. Let me give you an example of what Jose just mentioned. Bakes can't take the money. Mm-hmm. They literally wanted, the plan, if we did this, was for the cannabis industry to pay all of their fees, which were going to be substantial.
Quickly, David.
In a cash room. Well, it's an interesting question. If we're going to go into a cash room with a couple of county employees and pay their fees in cash, what could possibly go wrong with that? Secondly, we always talk about the revenue.
I want to get through as many questions
always
as we
talk
can
about the
tonight, so I
revenue.
don't want to allow the rebuttals to go on too much longer.
We
I'm
never
sorry.
talk about the cost of compliance.
I want to go on. Thank you. And if we have time at the end or you want to mention that in your closing statement, feel free. Jose, you get the next question. The homelessness rate has dramatically increased in the area. According to the Kern County Homeless Collaborative, in the last year, there's been a 9% increase in homelessness. With these numbers rising, what are some specific ideas that you have for dealing with the issue of homelessness?
Some of the ideas I have is we need to have more affordable housing available. We need to find out why our community members are without a home. We need to work through mental health, give them more resources to go out and talk to our community members that are out without a home. Why are they out there? We have been working with collaboratives out here, addressing some of those issues and finding facilities where they can stay. So one of the things that I know the collaborative, the Homeless Collaborative just received funding. And that was through all that work that collaborative did. We need to continue to do that and support those efforts and collaborate to have more of those resources brought and bring more facilities that can house some of these community members that don't have a home. But we definitely need to find out why they are out there, and if it's because they just don't have the resources, they don't have the funds, then we need to work as a county, work together, and find a solution.
Thank you. David, rebuttal.
To address homelessness, I think you need a few things. First of all, people need a job. We're trying to give people at least some work, whether it's picking up trash, working in the parks, learning basic cement and say roofing skills, plumbing skills, with the county by partnering with the homeless center. That's one. We can do those types of things. One of the things that I don't think really doesn't get talked about is a lot of the people that we see on the street are people that have been let out of jail. And we have what's called a Fed cap, and every day people are let out of jail that probably shouldn't be. And in some cases, they are dangerous criminals, but they're people that are ending up on the street that may have mental health issues as well.
Thank you. Grace?
Well, homeless is here to stay, and it's not just our people in Kern County. They're literally allowing people from the Los Angeles area. I found a gentleman, as a matter of fact, in Delano, who told me that he was given a ticket for the bus to come down here. So we're addressing homelessness from other areas also, but I do believe that we need to identify those that need the help, because we do have homeless individuals who wish to live that way. It's sad, but that's how they wish to live. But I think we do need to address the ones that are homeless and see how we can help them with jobs, maybe education, anything that can assist them into getting into some kind of work program.
Thank you. David, you'll get this next question, and I think it will allow each of you to expand a little bit on what you just said. According to the Center for Poverty Research at UC Davis, the national average poverty rate is at about 14%. The average rate in District 4 is twice that number, 28%. What are the steps you would take to ensure that the impoverished in our community get help?
Well, I'll go back to my first point, which was if they are capable, if they are not in need of mental health services, they need a job. That's the first thing that would help them. One thing the Board of Supervisors has done to promote that is we've adopted some policies, and you've seen some of the fruits of that lately. L'Oreal, the big cosmetic firm, is bringing 155 jobs to the Tejon Industrial Park. You've also seen Amazon has announced that they're coming in. That's 1,500 jobs and 300 seasonal workers around Christmas. They're coming because we are open for business and because of the policies that we instituted that would attract business or make this an attractive place where they would want to invest their money by getting revenue or a tax credit based on property tax that they are not currently paying and we are not currently receiving but would in the future. That's one thing that we can do. We can address homelessness by giving people a job, and we can address giving people a job by providing the policies that will make it attractive for people to come here and open a business.
Thank you. Grace, a rebuttal if you'd like.
Well, I agree that we're bringing a lot of jobs, but to connect it to the homelessness, the only way you can work that is if you train some of our people for those jobs. Because otherwise, they go to apply and maybe they don't even know how to do their resumes or how to go about filling out the application. So I think they need to be trained before these jobs come open. There should be some kind of a training program so they can qualify for some of these jobs.
Thank you. Jose?
I think we need job diversification. We need other industries to come into Kern County. But first of all, we need to address that our infrastructure is not top-notch here in Kern County. And we need to make it attractive to businesses to come here. David was talking about tax breaks and how they make it attractive that way by giving them some property tax breaks. But they're also looking at the crime rate. They're also taking a look at, do we have the labor force? Are we giving them a top-notch education? Are we investing in our community members? That's what we need. We need more additional diversification of jobs and investment in education.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Grace, you'll get this question first. The passing of Proposition 227 in 1998, also called the English Language in Public Schools Statute, sought to eliminate bilingual classes. However, almost 2 decades later, in 2016, Prop 58 reversed Prop 227, allowing non-English language to be used in public schools. Delano has also started their own dual immersion program, and there is talk about expanding this program to middle schools. If elected, would you support expanding these dual immersion programs?
Es muy importante que hablemos más de una lengua. Yo hablo en español y hablo en inglés. Y cuando voy a buscar un trabajo, para mí es mejor hablar 2 idiomas. What I'm saying is that it's very important that, well, for one, we are able to speak 2 languages. I speak English and I speak Spanish, and it definitely should be encouraged. You know that there are classes in as much as 2nd and 3rd grade where they put English-only students in to speak with the Spanish-speaking kids, and it's amazing how they learn to speak Spanish. But when you're looking for jobs, I can tell you right now, I got my job at the phone company because I was bilingual. The population is exploding with your Hispanics, and you need individuals to help them. So you need to learn to speak the Spanish language instead of the reverse, I think.
Thank you. Jose, any rebuttal?
No, I would agree that we do need to support multiple languages in our communities. We do need to communicate to community members that only speak one language. But it's very important that we do that because you make it more attractive for employers to hire you. If you're in the tourist system industry, hey, you can communicate with other community members that are coming to your industry. If you're working in the unemployment office, you can communicate through different community members that need services.
Thank you. David, any comments?
See.
Okay.
Very good. All right.
I would support that. The county will have virtually no impact on that, but we can obviously support and encourage those types of programs, but we can't implement them.
Thank you. Jose, you will get the next question. Considering the current redrawing of the district lines for District 4, how do you feel about what's happened in the recent redistricting process, and how will you represent all individuals in the newly designed district?
So I feel that the redrawing was the correct thing to do. We do need an opportunity in our community to have the Latino community, the immigrant community, to have an opportunity to elect someone of their choosing. I am a humanitarian first than I am anything else. I believe that we should serve all community members. And regardless of race, regardless of income stature or quality of life, I think that we should serve everyone. I believe in taking care of being a good steward and being a neighbor and taking care of community members. You always put human beings first before anything else, and that's what I believe.
David?
The boundaries that were drawn that the judge declared or deemed illegal were drawn, I think, in 2011. Maybe they were finalized in 2012. Predates me. I went to a couple of the public meetings, one at the Board of Supervisors, one at maybe the Chamber of Commerce. That was my involvement in that. I was a member of the public watching that because I had an interest in the boundaries because I was considering running for office at that time. I didn't see, and I don't know the law specifically on this, but I didn't see them I saw them do a lot of public outreach. I was supportive of either of the two maps that MALDEF submitted at trial, and my staff and I submitted other maps that unfortunately, this is during the mandatory settlement conference phase, unfortunately the public never got to see, MALDEF never got to see, because the Board of Supervisors didn't want anybody to see them.
Grace?
Well, once the court settled the case, we are where we are now, and it is time for all of these small communities that were put into District 4, which are all of the same type, being that Delano is one. We have Delano, McFarland, Wasco, Shafter, Lamont, Arvin, Buttonwillow, Lost Hills, McKittrick, and the outlying communities. And we have a lot in common. So I think it's time for somebody to represent the small communities, who lives in a small community and understands them. And I work with a diverse group of individuals in our community of Delano. We are the melting pot, is what we're known as.
Thank you. And for the audience and for Dr. Craybill, who's helping me with the audience questions, I'm going to ask 2 more questions of the panel, and then we're going to go to the audience questions in just a moment. So just giving a heads up to anyone in the audience who has not submitted a question yet and you'd like to, please do so right away. David, you'll get this next question. If you win this race this year, what do you think will keep you up at night?
That's a good question, and I'll tell you, that's the right question to ask, because in my view, most of these debates and forums, we never actually talk about the things that I can guarantee we're going to be dealing with, and some things that we're not going to be dealing with. Here's what's going to keep me up at night. Our budget, I worry about it all the time anyway, so I'm sure the next 2 years it'll continue. I worry about finding a way to hire more police officers, more detention deputies, and to give those same, I'm leaving some out, I'm sure, and to give them an adequate pay raise so they at least have parity with the Bakersfield Police Department. I don't want to lose our officers to other departments, especially after we've just trained them. Mostly it's budget related. I also, one of the big things that hasn't even really been discussed in any of these forums is the county's responsibility under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. We have a huge responsibility it's an unfunded mandate thrust upon us by the state, passed in 2014, and we are struggling with that. We're doing the best we can. We are now representing the undistricted areas, the people that have land, the farmers that have land that is not in a water district. We're now sort of their district. And you're going to see over the course, unfortunately, I think what you're going to see because of that act, and the act may have been necessary, you're going to see land that is in production today slowly come out of production, and you're going to see a decline in property values among some of our ag properties. Much like we saw with oil overnight, we may see that in our agricultural industry over a long period of time, and we have to come to grips with a declining revenue stream and how to deal with that. Other than that, I'm going to sleep just fine.
Grace, comments?
There's so many things I think that'll keep me up at night, but staffing is one of them, because in walking the different cities that are in the county area, they kept talking about the staffing for protection. So I think law enforcement needs to be staffed more for the security of our residents. The other thing is meeting the needs of the most needed communities. For example, Lamont has for years been crying about sidewalks, curb and gutter, and streets. Very basic things so that their kids can walk safely to school. So those 2 things will probably give me nightmares till I solve them.
Thank you. Jose?
What will keep me up at night is, someone not having a place to live. someone not having a job, someone not being protected, not being given enough resources for them to succeed in life. We need protection, so we need to protect and support our law enforcement. But we also need affordable housing for our community members that are being priced out of the market to have a place to live. We also need good jobs, not part-time jobs, jobs that will allow a family to feed and provide for their families.
Thank you. Grace, this question goes to you first. And I'd like each of you, when answering this question, to please speak directly to our students on this one, some of whom might be newly registered to vote or voting for the first time next month. So the question is to the students, can you give them your best answer on why they should vote for you?
Well, first of all, I am coming with experience, and everybody that has worked in government says, well, I'm coming with experience. But I believe that I represent the communities in this district because I live in one of those communities. I'm the only one who does live in one of those small communities. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm bilingual, and realistically, the predominant language there is Spanish. So you have to be able to speak to constituents without having to use an interpreter. But I have lived the same kind of life that these individuals currently are living or have lived, and that's working in the fields, working with hardworking families all my life, and then also on the other side, the corporate world, so that we can balance agriculture and business. So if you want someone that can represent these communities, that would have to be Grace Vallejo, who knows exactly the way they live, because I live that same kind of life. Thank you.
Jose?
I would say, you know, they keep on saying experience, but we've had governors with no experience in government. We've had governors that have been actors, no business experience either. I come with a wealth of experience. In banking, you have to be transparent managing people's money. In the community, you have to be outspoken and fighting for their basic needs. But in management, you also have to take a look at providing training, coaching, and financial planning, as well as resources for your business to be successful. And you'll have to be strategic to be successful. So vote Gonzalez if you want somebody that really cares for the community and will fight for you.
David.
I think you have to look at this as a job interview. And you have to decide for yourselves, who do you think has the best judgment, who has the experience, who has the discernment, who can do for you what you need to be done. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a barber, I saw him go to school. I've moved lines in the summer when I was in high school in the fields, and I've worked in the potato sheds. I did enough of that to know that's a hard life and a hard job, and I needed to do something else. I'm going to wrap up. I've been the supervisor in this newly formed district for 100 days, and we formed an Arvin-Lamont Economic Opportunity Area. We're putting in curbs and gutters and sidewalks and repaving streets in Lamont. I'm trying to get something done up in the city of Delano. That's been 100 days. What if you give me 700? Thank you.
Thank you. So can I get the questions from Dr. Craybill? And can I ask, as we're doing this transition, if you are a student here that helped develop any of the questions for Dr. Cargile's class or others, would you stand up so we can give you a round of applause? Thank you for all the work. Okay, thank you. So candidates will keep going in this same sort of fashion of the 90-second, 30-second rebuttal. I have not seen these questions before, so we'll go through as many as we can for 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll do the closing statements. Question number one, and I believe, Jose, you'll be next for the first answer. Does the redistricting of the new lines demand that a Latino be elected?
It demands that someone be elected that cares about the community unselfishly, that someone that does not have an agenda for themselves, that someone that wants to help the community, bring them resources, and provide them with the basic things that every human being wants.
Yep. Okay. Did it come back on?
Yes, it
Okay,
came back
thank
on. So it provides someone that understands the community, has worked in the community, that knows what are the needs in those communities, and that is willing to be there every time that they are asking and not closing their doors. So someone that's going to be available and provide them the answers that they need. I may not have all the answers, but I'm willing to look for them.
David?
Question is, does the supervisor have to be Latino? Obviously
Does
not.
the redistricting of the new lines demand that a Latino be elected?
Okay. I think we have to have moved past that. I hope we've moved past that. I don't certainly vote for anyone based on their heritage, their race, their ethnicity, and I'm hopeful that I'm giving the people in the 4th District more credit than that. When this campaign started, I heard one of my opponents say the following in Spanish, but I had someone interpreting for me. When you vote, this was at a supermarket opening, when you vote, remember to vote for someone who looks like you. So this campaign has been about that from the beginning, and I think we're well past that. I think the people of the 4th District are smarter than that. They don't want that kind of identity, racial politics, and they certainly deserve better than that.
Thank you. Grace?
You know, it shouldn't come down to that, but let's be realistic. If you're talking to somebody and they don't understand you, how can you communicate? So that's why I say being bilingual is so beneficial, because you want to be able to talk to people, whether it's in English or in Spanish. And I do that in Delano. You know, the residents in Delano are of all races, but I will fight for everybody, but I do have the advantage that I can talk to anybody who does speak Spanish. And I think people deserve that respect, to be very truthful.
Thank you. David, you'll get this question first.
Okay.
Commuting to school has become a real issue for students in the outlying areas. How would you help to fix this problem and assist the students in getting to school?
When you say school, are you referring to CSUB?
The questioner doesn't say, but maybe we could talk about that as well as any other assistance that you might consider or the panel might consider to help folks with this commute.
If you're talking about neighborhood schools, there's grants available through Safe Routes to School and curb and gutter projects, and working with school districts to find what are the most appropriate ways to expend those monies and where. If you're talking about longer commutes, say BC, Cal State, BC is, in the process of opening some annexes, I guess I'll call them. So they're trying to go to those communities. But if you're looking at just taking a student from, let's say, Lost Hills up in the north to Cal State, there's probably some park and ride opportunities. There might be some grant opportunities through the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. It just takes knowing where to ask the questions, and even if there isn't a category available, which I'm working on right now, for example, in an entirely different realm, but even if there isn't a category available at the Air District, for example, maybe we can write a category that would be perfect for something like that. If we can do something, if we can show a nexus between that and improving the air quality, there's an example of a place you could go. It's all going to take money. It doesn't just fall out of the sky. Whenever we talk about grants, it usually means that somebody somewhere paid a fee and it's gone into a pool, and now we've got a decision-making body that's going to figure out how do we want to divide this up.
Thank you. Grace?
Well, one of the things that I was instrumental in doing in Delano was that we created a bus route to BC, and that bus route runs 3 times a day so that students who have morning classes and not afternoon are not having to sit around waiting all day to catch a bus to go back home. The one thing I did ask and added, and the council concurred, was that we make one stop, and that's to our neighbors in McFarland. That way we can pick up the students there. And this bus route will take the students straight to BC. It makes no other stop but to BC. After the students are dropped off, it will go to the GET bus station in case if there's a resident that wants a ride there.
Thank you. Jose?
So I would say partnerships. You know, it's very important that county has facilities in some of these areas. Good example, you got libraries. You can have satellite classes in local unincorporated areas or in cities. You do that partnership with local cities as well as the county. But you also have to look for grant funding to bring schools in certain areas, and you have to lobby for them and support local initiatives that community members support. If it's bringing a school to a local community, then you help advocate for it because it's something that the community needs.
Thank you. This next question, Grace, you'll go first. An audience member wants to go back to the issue about legalization of marijuana that we talked about earlier. The question is, regarding the question about marijuana, you mentioned that the county, some of you mentioned that the county is unprepared to deal with it. Well, why not start preparing for it rather than just flat out saying, no, we can't do this?
I agree with that because, for one thing, this is going to come. There's no way that it's not going to happen. So we should be preparing for it. We should already be looking at what kind of policies, what kind of standards we want to put in. Do we want to do any zoning? How far away from schools, from churches? All of the things that will have to be considered. Why wait until it happens? At least you have it somewhere on the books, on a shelf, waiting to bring it down once the voters declare what they want. So I do believe we should be working on this already, taking a really strong look at how do we protect public health and the safety of the public, but allowing what the voters are wanting.
Jose?
I think we need to take a look at how are we going to protect the community as well? How are we going to keep that away from local kids? But I do think that it's very important to answer the question, because if a local facility is carrying too much cash, then where is that going to go? Local banks can't take it. Where is that going to be funneled through? We don't want to invite any crime, so we need to support law enforcement. But it is important that we take a look at local regulations. How are we preparing to do that, as well as how are we going to support our local law enforcement to enforce some of our policies and regulations here locally?
Thank you. David?
Well, we've taken one big step in that regard, and that was the certification of the environmental impact report. I don't know, it cost upwards of $1 million to prepare for the cannabis ordinance. That, just because we didn't adopt the ordinance, at the same time we didn't adopt the ordinance, we certified the EIR. That's still usable. One thing, and we have more discussions about this than people realize. One thing I mentioned earlier, but I wasn't able to go on, and now I'm not able to go on again. We need to talk about the cost of compliance. For us to think that there's going to be all this revenue and it's not going to cost anything to make people comply with this ordinance, they have an ordinance now that people don't comply with, and it costs us a lot of money to deal with. So this is not necessarily an industry that has a good track record of just following the rules really, really closely.
Thank you. Jose, the next question's for you, and an audience member wanted to return to an environmental issue. Would you support a safe buffer zone around schools and residential zones in regard to pesticide application and dust contamination? I'll read that one again. Would you support a safe buffer zone around schools and residential zones in regard to pesticide applications and dust contamination?
Yes. I want to make sure that our kids are safe. I want to make sure that our kids don't breathe any pesticides. I don't want any contaminants around my family or my kids. So yes, I would support that.
David?
That exists. The adequacy of it can be obviously questioned, but that's something that farmers always are very reluctant. Why they will stand up at a public hearing, for example, not just a school, but even a residential neighborhood, a shopping center, whatever, as development begins to encroach upon agricultural operations, they know they're going to use pesticides, and now they've got a more onerous burden of having to notify neighbors, having to notify schools whenever they're going to do that, and the buffer area, I think, is already in effect.
Grace?
I do support a buffer zone. I was speaking to a farmer, and he had the opposite complaint, that he was there first, and now they've built a school close by, and so he's being limited to what he can use on his crop, which is going to be organic. So with a buffer zone can actually be utilized for other things so that you don't have wasted land. There could be, for example, soccer fields that the kids can come and play. It can be used for other measures so that it's not wasted land, but by the same token gives that buffer between a school and the farming.
Thank you. David, you'll get this next question first. Kern County has been deemed one of the most illiterate counties in America. Funding and regulation of literacy programs have not been a priority for government officials. What is your stance, and how do you plan to influence this trend?
It strikes me that the kids playing soccer would get sprayed too. That doesn't really accomplish much of anything. About the only thing the county does, I believe, in the way of literacy is make a donation to the Kern County Literacy Society or Council, and they do the work. A lot of work that is done, for example, through CASA, court-appointed special advocates. The county donates money to them. The county donates money to the Kern Literacy Council because it's much cheaper for that group to do the work that's needed to be done than it is for county employees for us to staff up and do that type of work. So I would continue to support that. We fund lots of nonprofits that do lots of good work. That's one of them.
Grace?
Well, I think there has to exist collaboration because some of these agencies may need, for example, buildings to conduct whatever program they're wanting to conduct. So the discussion has to be made with these groups that would like to help the kids. For example, our libraries right now are struggling. I mean, they're fighting just to stay open. And that's a big fight, and I think our libraries should stay open. That is part of helping illiteracy because you have people who go there who don't necessarily use computers. So the libraries are part of the solution for illiteracy and for a building to be used, and among other county buildings possibly that could be used.
Thank you. Jose?
So the libraries is very important. There's a lot of programs that are provided through the library, and a lot of kids utilize them to do their homework, have a safe space to, sometimes they offer even training, as well as helping them with their homework. And so defunding the libraries, which is what's happening in our county, it's not a good thing. I think we need to continue to support our libraries and fund them so that these libraries, like this library that we're in, becomes this vibrant piece of in our community for education.
Thank you.
I got to respond to that.
Please.
The libraries have taken their cuts in the 4-year financial plan, but we did not cut them in this fiscal year, nor did we cut them in the last fiscal year. And I'll tell you a story. When I came to the county, the first thing they wanted to do in the library system was close the Buttonwillow Library. There's a guy in the back of the room that used to work on my staff that made something really good happen. We went to Omni. Omni worked with us. Omni allows us to lease a building in Buttonwillow for $1 a year. And we still have a library in Buttonwillow, although it's not open as many hours as I would like, but it's there. And it wasn't taken away, which was our library staff's recommendation.
The problem with that, David, is that the libraries is not available when the kids need them. And when you're not funding them or giving them enough staffing or resources, that becomes a problem.
Well, there's no question that it could be open more, But as I say, with the 4-year financial plan, with a drop in the price of oil, there's 2 gentlemen sitting here in the front that haven't had a raise in probably 9 years, nor do we have enough officers to put on the street. So I think what you're telling them is nothing for you, but we're going to keep the library.
Sorry, you're saying we don't invest in our kids?
Grace, do you want to chime in on this at all?
Yes, for one thing, I think that we do need to start looking at prioritizing within the budget. I can't tell you what's going to be done because I haven't, we don't look at those budgets. But I think that we're really trying to meet a certain plan on the backs of our staffing, on the backs of our libraries. And that's something maybe that we need to rethink and stretch the deadline that is being set right now for that particular program to balance the budget.
Thank you. And this will be our last question before we go to closing statements from the audience. And I want to make sure I try to word this properly. The question is, what would you do differently going forward than the incumbent, for those of you who aren't the incumbent, and for the incumbent, what would you do differently going forward? So Grace, what would you do differently? Jose, what would you do differently? So on and so forth.
I think that's David's.
Grace, you'll go first on this one.
Okay. Well, I think that the first thing I would do is start meeting with the different departments, because I know that in the city of Delano, when I came on board, I assessed everything before jumping into anything. And I also met with all the departments, because there's no one better than to know what works and doesn't work than the employees themselves in every single area. And I think that's real critical, getting to know your staff, getting to know what is it that they need, whether their tools are educational side for more training. If you don't know what they need, how can you decide what to put your money into? And that's one of the things that I would do different, is work with the various departments, not just make the decision from my side of the seat, because they're the ones that are going to have to carry something out.
Thank you. Jose?
So what I would do differently is, apart from just working with local departments and getting their input on what needs to be changed and get their recommendations, I would also work with states and federal governments and lobby for funding here locally. We keep on missing that. We keep on missing on bringing our tax dollars back. We've already paid our tax dollars, and they go into set-asides for grants and all of that. And when we partner with the state and federal government, they can allow us to and let us know some of the grants that are available to bring those back, and that's an investment in our community.
This will get me into trouble because I'm actually going to try to answer your question. I will probably be more open about what I am trying to accomplish and talk about it more at board meetings, and that may be much more uncomfortable for my fellow board members. That's number one. That's cryptic enough, nobody quite knows what that means, but it might really be ugly, I guess, in a few months. I've tried to be a little nicer than maybe I needed to be, and I've tried to be a little more collegial, and I'm going to, going forward, maybe be a little more forceful than I have been.
Thank you, David. So we're going to move to closing remarks. We're going to give 90 seconds to each of you, just like we did on the first answers for the questions so far. David, we're going to go in the opposite order that we went for opening. So David will go first with the closing remarks, then Jose, and then Grace will finish us up. So please, David, if you would, share anything that you'd like to help the voters understand a little bit more about your positions. And I want to thank you as well on behalf of the university, yourself, and Jose and Grace for being here tonight. So please, a 90-second closing statement.
Thank you, David. Thank you again to Cal State, for you organizers, for the students coming tonight, and for the students that participated in putting the questions together. And we went at it a little bit here, but we have no hard feelings. And I want to thank Jose and Grace for being candidates and being willing to put themselves forward. It's not an easy thing to do. And this is not an easy job. I have told many people many times that if you want to just show up and vote yes on the staff's recommendation, you can cruise through this job. If you really want to try to do a good job, if you want to impact people's lives, if you want to push forward policies that will really impact people and help people, and you know how to do that, this can be a very difficult job. But it's a very rewarding job. And I would encourage any of you here, any of you students that are interested in government, may not be an elected position, but there are lots of positions in government that you should consider, lots of positions in government that you would probably be very good at, and it would be a very, very rewarding career. I think you should vote for David Couch because David Couch knows how to make government work for you, not against you. I've done that in the past. I want to be a supervisor for everyone. I don't want to, when the phone rings in our office, we don't care what the person's name is. We don't care what they look like. We don't care where they're from. We don't care what their background is or their ethnicity. And we don't care how big or small their problem is. We help them with that. And I want to continue to do that for you. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Jose.
Again, I wanted to thank everyone for being here. I'm really excited. I'm back at Cal State Bakersfield, and during a debate, I've seen the growth here in Cal State Bakersfield, and it's great to see that. I really want to thank the candidates as well. It's a great discussion. But why would you vote for me? Because I care about your community. Because I'm a humanitarian first. Because I want to serve everyone. I don't want to leave out anybody. I want to work with the community. I want to serve the community. I've lived through the challenges that these communities have gone through in the 4th District. I've lived the fears that these communities have gone through. I am passionate to take care of the community and seeing our kids smile. I want to see them have a great education. I want to see them to have the basic needs, the basic things that they need in their community. I want to see them get a better job, provide those jobs. In business, we also work with government. We have experience working with government. We collaborate. We work with local customers to make them happy. That's what I would do for you, is collaborate, work with you, and make sure that I have my doors open and that I listen. That is my job. Thank you.
Grace?
Well, first of all, I think that the reason you would want to vote for me is because I am bringing what I've already shown in Delano by bringing jobs, both full-time and part-time, for the college and high school age that needed that additional help to continue to college. I've also proven that I've brought jobs there to the city of Delano. Recreation has been a big passion for me, and I have brought that to keep kids off the street. We'll be opening a brand new community center with a kickback room that will have the kind of things that kids will hang around for and not be out on the streets. I've worked with our law enforcement to make sure they have the tools that they need. They needed 40 vehicles 2 years ago, and I promised them they would get it, and they just got their last 20 by splitting it up into a 2-year budget. So I've been working with our community for 14 years, and I've been able to be successful at it. This is the same kind of success I would like to bring to these same communities that lack many of the things that we did in Delano. And I work very hard at that. My door is open to everybody, and I work with everybody, irregardless of what anybody else thinks of races. I'm just telling you, I am the person that will work with every single individual to give a better quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. And audience, please keep your applause going and thank our candidates tonight for coming. We are very appreciative. I want to thank Debray and Nareda for helping me up here. And the candidates have agreed to stay around, so they will be here for questions. They will be here if you want to approach them and ask them anything. And we just want to be very thankful to all of you. It's been a great night, and thank you so much to our audience as well. Terrific. Drive safely, everyone, and have a great night.
You guys were awesome. I didn't have a thought about timing. I was like, woo, okay, I can concentrate on other stuff. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
We'll do this again?